We've been standing tall on this earth for hundreds of millions of years.
We've danced in the strongest storms. We have survived the harshest winters. We have witnessed the most beautiful sunrises. We have seen so much change.
The first towns were built in nature, but those towns grew into cities and squeezed nature out.
Apart from us, you could tell something was missing. You felt incomplete, and so you became nature's champions.
You held us in your hands and placed us carefully in the ground and tucked us into warm, fertile soil and shared water with us so we could grow.
And we grew, and the wild started to come back.
We've learned the energy of the city, the pulse of traffic, the sound of sirens, the booming music, the crowds of people, always in such a hurry.
Sometimes we feel invisible in the rush, but every now and then you stop to look up at us. You pause to listen to the wind in our leaves. We run circles around our trunks and take refuge in our shade.
We are part of something much bigger than this block, than this rectangle of green between skyscrapers.
We are part of a vast web of nature that makes the city wild inside and connects us to the wilderness outside.
We are food for squirrels, homes for foxes, critical rest stops for weary migrators.
We keep air fresh and people healthy.
We create vital connections to flowing rivers, nearby forests, neighboring oceans.
We are constant reminders that you too belong to something bigger than yourselves, and that cities will always be stronger with nature than separate from it.
What makes cities wild?
I do.
You do. We do.
Let's make them wilder together.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be with you. I think many of us would have wished that we had been together in Jaipur for the 11th World Wilderness Congress. But that's life. We did a lot of planning, did some good programming. But look, here we are now at this fantastic opportunity developed by Sanctuary and Book My Show. So let's have a shout out to Sanctuary and Book My Show and their teams for putting this whole thing together. So thanks a lot. Really good stuff. So we're going to take a little journey together. I've got a few minutes with you. I'm very honored to be with you. Thank you. And just want to take a little journey of the last year. The last year, a lot has happened, So we'll do a little bit of starting with last summer, and then we'll go through the autumn, and then boom, first quarter, pandemic time. And then where do we go from here? What's next? Let's start that journey, okay? Last summer of 2019, everything was buzzing. Economy was hot, unemployment very low, all the jousting between the superpowers. Meanwhile, the conservation community was really planning for 2020. All the big congresses had lined up: World Wilderness Congress in Jaipur, World Conservation Congress, the IUCN in Marseille, some substantive meetings leading up to the big every 10-year convention on biodiversity target setting meeting that was in Kunming, scheduled for Kunming, China in November of 2020. So everybody was planning for it. The big emphasis, climate change, biodiversity, they were going to come together, and the conservation community was going to show that we needed to address them in a holistic manner. We were going to advocate for much more ambitious protected area targets. Why not go for protecting half the Earth's lands and seas? So everybody was jockeying. Man, the skies were full of experts, conservation experts, guilty, flying from place to place, making arrangements, hopefully most of them paying their carbon credits. We, the Wild Foundation and the World Wilderness Congress, pay to the Yawanawa people in the Amazon. So anyhow, everybody's zipping around, booming around. The planning for the Congress was going really, really well. Dealing with those topics that most of you know about, but we were very solution oriented, as we always are. And we were looking at rewilding and restoration, absolutely critical parts of meeting that protecting half target. Of course, the first priority, protecting the wilderness that is left on land and sea, because it's the most cost efficient, most high return, low cost way to address climate change and address species extinction. Okay. So that was our main message, and working with intergenerational programs, lots of collaboration with our indigenous brothers and sisters, because they, of course, sit on 25 to more percent of the Earth's remaining wildlands. It's their culture, it's their life. So a lot of integration with business and policy and government. Going great. We had great outcomes lined up. And then we went into the first quarter of 2020, this year, January 2020, looking good, cranking up. And then February, it started. And very quickly, I looked around and I said, this is not going well. And then boom. So we pulled the plug. We consulted widely around the world, and of course with our Indian colleagues, pulled the plug on Wild 11. We were the first of the major pins to fall, but for obvious and important reasons. So we adapt. That's what we do. We have really one purpose in our life besides finding the meaning for ourselves, and that purpose is to adapt to what life offers, provides, otherwise lays traps, is to adapt and move forward, because there's really only one way to move in our life, and that's forward, inspired and informed by the past, but committed to a better future. So, first quarter of 2020, boom. Guess what? 2020 and all its conservation milestones was postponed. Suddenly things changed. And, it was out of that everything we've been experiencing the past few months has rolled forward. And it's important for us, I think, to take note of the lessons learned, where we go from here. But let's talk first about how we got here. Because we were talking about climate change and biodiversity coming together, one holistic thing. Suddenly, pandemic, and there's a third thing. We now have a triad in front of us. Not dual existential threats to humanity. We have a triad. So what do these things have in common? The pandemic, which has a lot of, virus and wildlife and wet market issues, species extinction, climate breakdown. They're really all related, but they're all symptoms, right? People tend to say, oh, we need to fight that. We need to fight that. Well, what we really need to do is to recognize that the health of our Earth, Gaia, the health of ourself, and certainly the health of humankind, it throws off symptoms. And the big doctor, Gaia, is providing these symptoms: overheating, species disappearing, people dying because of hosting a virus. Well, of course, they're the symptoms of an underlying relationship issue, and that's the relationship between people and nature, and people and people. But primarily at this time, it's people and nature, because human society at scale has been built since day one on exploitation of nature, taking. I don't have to tell you this, you know that. What we really need is a new relationship with nature. So I believe the pastime of conservation should really be renamed to be the pastime of relationship counseling, so that we're really talking to each other with respect, and to people who don't believe what we believe with respect, but giving back to nature in a way that is respectful and engenders something we've never had before on planet Earth in a major scale. It's been there culturally with our indigenous brothers and sisters who have maintained those values of reciprocity, who run their life, who look into the future, and they model themselves on this spirit of sharing. So these are very, very, very core issues. And if we don't deal with this core issue of relationship, the symptoms will only get worse. Because you know how life teaches us. When she wants to get our attention, she throws a pebble at the window. Well, if we don't pay attention, boom, she throws a stone to the window. And you know, if she doesn't really get the attention she needs, she picks up a boulder. And my friends, I can tell you that this pandemic we have right now, it's not the boulder, okay? We have time, not much, but we have to act. Or brothers and sisters, that boulder's going to come. Okay, so how do we avoid that boulder? What do? There's a couple of quick things. I just mentioned one. Let's give nature the space that she needs. I mean, nature needs half, science, indigenous, all the knowledge is there. This is not rocket science. If we're going to get along on this planet, nature, we need to have one half of nature protected and functioning well. So nature can do her job, which is to support all life on Earth, okay? We call that nature needs half. There's many different movements around that. You can do it on your farm. You can do it on your house. You can do it at scale, ecoregions. India has great opportunities to do it with these vast watersheds that have been hammered or overlogged and they're barren. The rewilding of these areas is part of nature needs half. It's a very important part of nature needs half, as well as saving those primary ecosystems up there in the Northeast and in the Nilgiris. And, India is just has these really incredible biodiversity areas that are under threat, but still have all the major mammals. It's amazing. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is something really specific, and we need to stop the commercialization of wildlife for food and for medicine. This is what got us to this pandemic thing. It's also one of the big drivers of extinction, habitat loss, and commercialization of wildlife. It's not only not necessary, and I'm not talking about the subsistence uses, local communities. We need that. These people need food. I'm talking about farming wildlife species for human consumption, or stripping wild areas of wildlife for the pet trade, for food, for medicines, to make money in a commercial scale. We must stop that. We're not talking about stopping the illegal trade. That is so yesterday. We need to stop the commercialization of wildlife for human benefit. Okay? Very, very important. Okay, so in summary, we have a few things that we can do. These are big, broad things, but everybody can do them. It's not in the expert realm, okay? We go out there and create movements and create space and save space, love nature, love each other. Little summary now. What's actually happening to us now? Well, number one is we're being reminded who's in charge. That's not a bad thing, okay? Number two, maybe even more importantly, is we're reminded that human actions have consequences. That if we live within the rhythms of nature, of sustainability, replenishment, recycling, of enhancing life, of creating net positive life, okay? If we live within that, we prosper. If we don't live within that, we suffer. Communities get shattered, families get hurt, economies go tumble. So, consequences. I'm sure many of you know Pope Francis. He often quotes the Spanish proverb, which is actually one of my favorites as well. God always forgives. Humans sometimes forgives. Nature never forgives. Now, this doesn't mean that nature is red in tooth and claw and she's out to get us. That's not it. What it simply means is that nature is impartial. Nature delivers consequences. So like I said before, you live within the rhythms of nature, develop, build, but do so in a way that replenishes life, doesn't take life. Okay? Then we prosper. Those are the consequences that we want and that we deserve if we act correctly. Okay, so I think we're at the stage now where looks like we might be getting through this pandemic. I would not place a big bet on it. Life has a way of changing, as we've seen. But what are just quickly a few of the things that we need to look out for? Maybe three things from me. The first thing is language. You know, we're hearing a whole lot these days, certainly in my country. We have a wartime president. Well, people are talking about the invisible enemy within nature, and we're fighting a battle against nature and all that kind of stuff. Well, listen, you know this. Language has power. By using language like that, externalizing the enemy as nature and battling is the very relationship that has got us into this same problem. I don't think most of you would know the old comic strip Pogo, which was in America back in the 60s when I was growing up. And it was a really cool, Pogo was a possum who lived with a bunch of other animals in the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia. And they were one of the first sort of social comic strips. And they often commented back then on pollution or trees getting cut down or too much plastic or the swamp's water is disappearing or the swamp's filling up with trash. And so they were complaining about it one day. And Pogo was sort of the ringleader, very wry, wise possum. And they were complaining, who's doing all of this? You know, all the alligators and the birds and the rest of the gang. Who's doing all this? And Pogo quietly said, my friends, we have seen the enemy, and it is us. Wiser words have never been spoken, and it's guided my life for a long time. Nature's not the enemy. It's our own actions, our own thoughts, our own inactions that are what we have to aim for. So language is one thing, and as we hopefully move forward out of this, something else we're going to have to take great care about is what I call the return to normal syndrome. Rightly, people are traumatized. They've lost loved ones. They've lost their jobs. They've been staying inside for months. This is trauma, okay? Well, they're going to want to get back out there and they're going to want to, roar right back in and do the things that they really want to do. This is an opportunity to also pause. Talk with your community. Get them together. What kind of world do we want to create? Some of the things we saw during this pandemic, we want more wildlife around, less pollution, quieter, less travel, okay? Work within your community, within your clubs, within your families, What kind of world do we want? Now is the time. We have a window of opportunity. Let's use it now. Okay. Third thing, I think we really need to be careful of is let's get this economy going again. Watch out. Because every business, well, not every, but most businesses and certainly governments, because politicians want to be elected, we have elections coming up, they're going to want to open things up. They're going to want to put money and advertising into, hey, guess what? We are back in business. You buy this product or you go to this place and life is normal and life is good and just do what we have, buy this thing, do that, and everything is going to be normal. Well, guess what? That's business as normal, okay? And what we need to do right now is hashtag stop business as normal. This is the opportunity to create an economy that is based on conservation, that is based, has a goal of net positive life enhancement, net positive conservation economy, okay? It can grow, but it grows in the right way because it's sustainable. There's lots of examples about this. Of course, it involves energy. It involves creating the right food systems that enhance life, build soil, all of that kind of stuff, okay? So there's many things we can do. And if we do them all together, I think we have a thought in our mind now. So I'm just going to sum up here. We have a triad. We have climate, we have climate chaos, we have massive species extinction, and now we have pandemic, okay? We have an emergency. We have a nature emergency. We don't want nature to throw that boulder through the window because then it's really consequential, okay? So we have a nature emergency like we've never had. We need a survival revolution like we've never imagined. Let's imagine it. So what does a survival revolution look like? Well, I'll give you 3 characteristics as a little ending shot here. And thank you for your time. The first thing is that a survival revolution is movement-based. We have leadership that needs to be informed and compelled to act for life, not act for profit or position, okay? As Bill McKibben says, it's not the time now. We're past the time where we can solve this one electric car at a time. We need people, organizations, groups, communities to come together to compel and inform our leaders that life support is their job, okay? Super important. The other thing is that we need to create solutions that are modeled on nature. I said this earlier, I need to say it again. Look for things that replenish life, how nature does, agricultural practices, development models that don't just give people food, but they create food-producing systems that create life and biodiversity. Because the biodiversity of the soil is what we live on, okay? Yeah. Final characteristic of the survival revolution is love. Learning to love each other and to love nature and to love a future that has potential and hope and reality for our children and for the world of nature. Okay? So I look forward to joining with you, learning with you, as together we create the survival revolution. Thank you.